Welcome, everybody. It's good to have y'all here for another episode of the Art Block Podcast. I am Luis Antonio Pichardo, the founder and executive director of DSTL Arts, Distill Arts as I call it, the nonprofit arts mentorship organization that inspires, teaches, and hires emerging artists from underserved communities. As usual, I am accompanied by my lovely co-host, Abraham Jaramillo. Say what's up, Abraham.
What's up?
And our special featured guests today are a couple of our alumni mentees, including the one and only Nikolai Garcia. Nikolai Garcia has been invited to read his poems at San Francisco's Flor y Canto Literary Festival, Voices of California 2023 in Sacramento, and Lit Hop Fresno. His first chapbook, Nuclear Shadows of Palm Trees, was published by Distill Arts in 2019. His second chapbook, All the Sad Music, will be released this year, this month, in fact, for all of y'all that are extra anxious about, copping that one. It's going to be a limited edition one, which we'll talk a little bit more about soon. And today we have also Richard Tucci. Richard is an award-winning director and prodigious producer who is also multiracial and living with an invisible disability. Mentored by Oscar winner Seth Winston and mentored by director Penny Marshall, he is very honored to have been provided this opportunity by Distill Arts. He's also served on producing teams for hit shows on Lifetime, Food Network, and Bravo. Tucci's forthcoming feature film and feature directorial debut, Unfriendly Fire, stars Oscar-nominated actor Eric Roberts, Golden Globe-nominated actress Beverly D'Angelo, and comedy legend Deborah Wilson. You can find him and his team online using @GreaterGrander or at greaterandgrander.com. And not to sell short Nick, but Nikolai is also online. You can follow him using @HelloKommie with a K. And I also happen to have a couple of samples of the aforementioned books. This one in particular, Threads of Imagination, is by the one and only Mr. Tucci. And Nuclear Shadows of Palm Trees, we got that one right here by Nikolai. This happens to be one of the final 10 copies in existence, at least for sale, for purchase. All the Sad Music will be made available, like I said, this month at the LA Times Festival of Books. So make sure you get that one. That one is a special limited edition, fine press art book, we'll call it, with a specific numbered count. So that's going to be some new hotness right there. So welcome, gentlemen. It's good to have you all here.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you as well. Always a pleasure.
Yeah. So I guess starting off, so that our audience can kind of get to know a little bit about you, how about y'all tell us what was the most recent big thing that you did in your professional creative careers? Nick, why don't we start off with you, man?
Recent big thing. I guess the biggest thing that I can think of last year, I got to read at Grand Performances downtown with a bunch of like really cool poets, including some people I've never read with. Shout out to Mike the Poet who made that happen. It was a really cool event, actually, outdoors out there.
Nice. Yeah, I was really bummed that I had to miss that one, but big congrats on that one.
And I was there in spirit. Yeah.
And you, Senor Tucci?
Yes, sir. I think the last big thing in my professional career that I'm really quite proud of is this last Friday, less than a week ago, I had the opportunity to direct a sizzle reel for a unscripted reality competition show. Unfortunately, I can't talk about the details because of the celebrity attachment and all of that stuff. But I will say that it is part of a community that I've been a part of in the past, and I'm very happy with how it turned out. And I'm looking forward to representing this community on tablets everywhere.
Top secret. I like it.
Yeah. Yes, I could tell you more, Abraham, but then I'd have to kill you. Or at least run really fast away from you before you hit me back.
Hey, death for a chisme? I mean, death for gossip, right? That's good. Yeah. So, one of the things that I wanted to ask you guys, and I know because being an artist nowadays, and I think it has probably been before, but I think it's more of a thing nowadays. It becomes more of a multitask because you have to be a photographer, you have to be a videographer, you have to web design, and then also be promoter and teacher and like grant writer. How do you guys deal with these multiple set of skills, and how do you deal with all these things you have to manage to be an artist?
I mean,
Nikolai, do you want to go for?
You have to learn these things along the way. I mean, when you first get the idea that you want to write a book, you want to publish a book, you want to put something out, you're not thinking about all the other things that you have to do. The big thing is, promotion and setting up events, doing social media, doing a website. You don't think about, well, at least I didn't think that I would have to do all that stuff as well, but I mean, you learn along the way, and luckily, DSTL Arts and the mentee program has a bunch of workshops. I mean, we just did the website design one a couple weeks ago. So we're always learning new things, and so I really appreciate that. But I think the biggest thing is the promotion. It's a little bit hard for me because I don't know any like design. That's something I definitely want to learn so I can like make my own flyers. Because right now I have to rely on other people, rely on other people to make flyers for me. But then I have to, take the time to post online. I really hate that I have to be on social media so much. I'd rather not be, honestly. But you have to go on there and promote yourself, promote your work. Otherwise, you do this work and nobody sees it or hears it. So you have to do all that stuff.
Yes, I think sometimes there are artists who are a little more hermit in terms of social, like all gathering all these things, but in also the terms of we want to have our message or our art outside, it's kind of tricky, right? How do you navigate that? And Tucci?
Yeah, it's especially difficult in a big city like LA where, if you look at it the right way or the wrong way, there are opportunities around every corner. But trying to figure out where to focus your energies is so difficult because you only have so many hours in the day and then you need to sleep. So which grant proposal do you write for? Which application for publicity or giving a book talk at a specific shop do you apply for? And kind of making that like, where are my realistic opportunities is probably the hardest for me. I'll also double what Nikolai said about social media because honestly, I've been really disappointed with social media. Unless you spend, it seems to me, at least in my opinion, it seems like unless you spend a lot of time on the platforms and interact and post sub comments, it really is kind of a pay to play platform. And there's not a lot of like core discoverability, unfortunately. So I just, as a mental health precaution, I just took all of the social media apps off my phone. So
yeah, when I started the social media thing, especially because somebody said, "Oh, you have to put your stuff outside" and things like that, and actually it was working better. But now I think it has changed the format of you have to be like an addict. You have to put stuff, or you have to even pay for robots to like give you clicks, and like it just becomes something weird. But again, sometimes you have to play the game for the time being, but I'm pretty sure things are gonna evolve, Art is never the same thing.
It's very true. And I think that, one of the things about DSTL Arts and the way that I structured the program, it was always about giving people those tools to develop their presence online while at the same time developing their craft. And I have to admit that working with both of you as my mentees and my cohorts, I've had a really positive experience with reading your work and interacting with your work. How do y'all feel like that maybe translates into the digital world, or in other venues? Like, I know Nikolai, for example, you do go out and you perform in the real world a lot. How does that differ from, say, the online interactions with your poetry or with your other work that you do? What are the things that you've noticed about that?
Like, do you mean like when we meet every week? Like, what is it that we take to like the real world, or how it connects?
Yeah, more about how it connects. Like, how would you say that the small group environment, how does your poetry, in your observation, right, how does it connect with an audience in a small group versus when you maybe post some of it online, versus when you're out there doing your thing at an open mic or something? How do you see those differences in reaction?
Because I don't really post a lot of my work online. I definitely post a lot of events that I'm going to be doing or participating in. Once in a while, I'll post a video of a reading or something like that. I know there's some poets who don't even like, being recorded and whatnot when they're doing an open mic. I don't mind it or anything. Sometimes people record me and they'll post it and they'll tag me, and I'll go ahead and share that. But I don't go out of my way a lot to post my own work. However, I did have interesting interaction. I think is a few days ago. I was sitting at a bar in East LA watching some sports, and actually it was Monday, and it was like dead. There was just me and a couple other people in there, and a poem kind of came into my mind. And I haven't written anything really since like November, since I finished the last manuscript. And for whatever reason, I decided to like write these lines in a story and posted, which I thought were, kind of cheesy and not really something that I would want to publish. But I just felt like I needed to get it out there, and I did. And I had a lot of interactions with it, a lot of like likes, and somebody even asked if they could publish it, and I'm like, no, this is just if anything, this is just the first draft. It was a good idea, and somebody else said, hey, this was great. This is the best thing I've read in a while, and I'm like, well, that's nothing. Here's what I left out. Here's what is going to go in the second draft. So those are the kind of interactions, I guess, that I have online. It's much different in person. I like when I'm reading with other people, and the best part of events, for me, poetry events, is interacting with people afterwards and talking, sometimes about poetry, sometimes about other things. But, to me, that's the best part.
What about you, Senor Tucci? Your medium is a little bit of writing, but a lot of, other visual forms. How do you see people like interacting and reacting to work based on the group size?
Sure. It's really a mixed bag because, putting work out there is, well, first in the digital world, most of the time you just don't get a response at all. At least that's been my experience. Even when I put out a beautiful image, I think it's an amazing photograph of a bright orange sunset or what have you, and it'll get 2 likes on Instagram. But then I was actually part of a group show back in, I want to say 2022. It was called Polarity. And I had a piece out there called Screenplay of Hope. And what I had done was I got into this old vintage typewriter from the 40s and I placed it there. And all of the screenplay pages had every single word replaced with the word hope. And I try to be cute with it, like, in single letter words like I or A, I replaced it with just the letter H, capitalized or uncapitalized appropriately. And I put it out there in a way to try and convey that we as artists, we as writers, we our our purpose, at least mine, is to try and put out something into the world that gives people hope, that gives people inspiration, whether it's a screenplay or a poem or what have you. And the show was very well attended. The people who I invited digitally did not show up. The people who I invited in person, face to face, and texted them to follow up, they showed up. But what was interesting was talking about in-person interactions. A woman came up to me and, unprompted, she said that she loved that particular work and that it moved her to tears.
Hmm.
And thank God my friend was there to witness her saying that, because if I had relayed it, nobody would have believed me. But but having that kind of one-on-one experience is very profound and very moving, and you just don't get that digitally. At least I don't, anyway. But that's been my experience in terms of digital versus in-person interactions. So
Yeah, I think digital art is like dating apps. Same thing. It's not a lot of emotion. It's not a lot of the human connection.
I am
because
right
you
there
are
with
not-
you, Abraham. Yes.
Yeah, it's a thing that's, and I think that's why we as a society should encourage more spaces where you can go actually experience art and not just click it. It's so different. Like I have same thing with, like, sometimes I finish a piece of work or I'm seeing somebody else and you can see this connection to people that I don't think they would have if they were in their phone. Not that I don't like, I like seeing things on the phone, but it's just different connection. Same thing with people who are doing to like plays, right? To movies and plays. Even movies are a little bit better because you're in a space that you are dedicating yourself to the screen. And in the computer, in the phone, it's not the same. So I definitely feel you there.
If I could piggyback on that also, Abraham, our brain, I know a little bit about this because I mentioned at the top, I have an invisible disability, it's PTSD. And so I've done a lot of studying about how the brain works to try and understand my own brain. And there are a ton of studies out there that show the object size and how it's placed impacts our brain in terms of giving it importance in a space. And object permanence plays a big factor into it, because when you are just scrolling on your phone, one image after the other, it just interprets everything as scrollable and ignorable. Kind of like the way we just, pass by people that we drive by on the street. But our brain like picks up all of these messages in very important ways. So I think you're right, Abraham. To have those kind of physical spaces are important. And you can read more about the neuroscience of this in Threads of Imagination at LA Times Festival of Books on Sunday, April 27th, where I'll be giving a workshop.
That's the most professional selling of a book I have seen in my life. There you go. That's how it's done.
Great commercial. By the way, the book is available at dstilarts.org/shop.
And also the cover was beautifully designed as well. It was an amazing cover that Luis saved me from myself by designing. Sorry, Nikolai, I'll shut up. Sorry.
Well, it was a lot of fun designing that particular one. I had some, little challenges here and there, as simple as it looks like it would be, but yeah. And
And
that,
so,
I think does kind of tie into a little bit what Nikolai was saying about, having the design skills, right, to be able to convey messages and whatnot. But I don't know. I mean, it's not that difficult to understand the basic concepts of design, I would say. And once you have those basics down, you could definitely convey messages that you want to convey.
and since we're talking about like projects, 'cause again, sometimes I feel like I have done it. Like, this is my project. I'm just working like me against the world, like either here in my computer or just my camera and me, or writing by myself. But there's sometimes that we take on projects that involve more people, like especially recording or events or teaching or getting a program together. How do you guys deal with working with other people? Because definitely we had a conversation yesterday with some of our mentees about that specific thing. Like, we have issues with like working because we don't have all the skills, and we have to like do things, and it becomes a hard thing because you're just by yourself. But bringing in people is not easy sometimes as well, because they're helping you, and that's for sure. Like, we don't do things by ourselves, like we need help, but it's also an extra different skills that you have to develop, right? So how do you guys deal with working with more people in bigger projects?
I mean, it's difficult, especially because writing. You heard this a million times before. Writing is a very solitary act, and it's just you. But I mean, like I said earlier as well, I like reading with other poets, and one of the other things that I do is I co-host a reading and open mic in Long Beach with Mauricio Moreno, who I actually met in DSTL Arts. And I'm very much in charge of booking all the feature poets, and I really hate just nagging people, but I feel like that's the majority of what I have to do. Email people and ask them to send us their bios and their photos, and you have to do that, repeatedly. And so I mean, I feel like I'm being annoying, but I mean, it has to be done. Otherwise, the event is not going to get promoted, and if it doesn't get promoted, it's not going to be well attended. And if it's not well attended, then people are gonna the artists, the poets are gonna show up, and there's gonna be no one there to hear them read. Um, and like something else that I mentioned is that I don't know how to make flyers or anything like that, so I have to rely on other people to make the flyers. So I have to bug people about that too. There's deadlines and all that stuff. So I mean, it's bothersome, but in the end, we always have like really cool, fun events, and so that's what it's all about, really.
Yeah, so I gonna say, like, for people who are invited or people who are going to a space and they're asking you to do things or to show up, do not let that people stranded. Like, help them out, attend, because these things don't work by themselves, and that's a lot of work behind. So definitely help and support each other, because definitely you feel like, oh, it's all right if I don't attend, right? But it's a lot of work behind it, and put yourself in those shoes. It's hard to keep those things alive, and in reality most of the time is done with love, and we're trying to create a community and just try to help each other. So again, put yourself in those shoes of the organizers and the people who put all the work behind, and help them out. And Tucci, how do you deal with these people? How do you deal with big groups?
That is a great question because, like, coming up through the USC film program, of course, film is a very collaborative medium. I think the most people I've ever had on set of something that I was in charge of, produced or directed, was probably about 30 people. And there's a whole bunch of conventions about getting into film and stuff that I won't get into, but I will say that if you're trying to work with other people, the thing that kind of switched it all for me was realizing how valuable the Socratic method is. And I'm sure you guys could articulate the Socratic method better than I could, but like if you disagree with someone about where they're coming from, don't tell them they're wrong. Just ask questions like, hey, if this is how you see it, how is this going to be affected by the other thing in the other scene? Or if this is this character's motivation, why is it in this other shot that they are not doing X, Y, and Z? And that works with working with film, with artists. It is especially helpful when you're trying to get a friend out of a cult that they've accidentally joined. That's a story for another time. But that is...
You gonna skip through that? Oh, man. What a tease.
I can tell that story this Sunday, April 27th at LA Times Festival of Books.
Oh, my God. I'm learning so much already.
Thank you. I'll also say one other thing is, to Nikolai's point, luckily I don't have to organize a ton of like theatrical events where I need to encourage people to show up. But I do, I was given this great tip by a guy named Danny McDermott, who's an actor and comedian. And what is, you kind of break it down into chunks, right? You invite somebody, you send them a text 2 weeks beforehand. Then you send them a text 1 week beforehand. Then 3 days beforehand. Then 1 day beforehand. Then the day of. So it's constantly getting smaller. So it's a really good way of like sending a positive text message saying, hey, I'm looking forward to seeing you on this date. And you're not nagging. You're just being positive and following up. So, yeah.
A little trickery behind these things.
Yeah, definitely. And that's actually one of the techniques that I, at least as much as I can, try to use when promoting our events. So yeah, that's like a pro level tip right there for anybody listening or watching.
A lot of patience is needed for these kind of things. Absolutely. And sometimes I'm like, come on, people, just do your thing.
Yeah. But going back to the topic of creating spaces, though, I feel like all of us have engaged in that in some way, and I'm curious to hear from both of your perspectives. What is the thing that, in each of your individual ways, has really resonated in people through your act of creating space? Have you seen people maybe, I don't know, come out of their shell, or have you seen people go on and do other bigger things that they didn't even expect? I'm kind of curious to hear, since both of you are working within that sort of mentor role in your own rights.
That's a very, very interesting question, and actually something I was thinking about today, because with the events that I mentioned earlier, what we're doing is creating a community. There's a large, especially in Los Angeles, there's a big poetry scene, but I'm part of a community, of friends, regulars who go to this open mic that I do, and I'll go to their readings, they'll come to my readings, and we have a lot of fun afterwards, after the readings, and to me that's what it's about. Because honestly, sometimes I don't even have fun writing, or these days I don't feel too much like writing, but like all my really good friends are poets. So I'm part of this community, and I want to stay part of this community. So I keep, building with them. I keep building, and I get to see people write poems, draft poems. I get to see people put out their first books, sign their first contracts. It's a lot of fun, and I mean, like I said earlier, to me it's just all the stuff that happens afterwards, after we're done doing the readings. That's to me, that's where the space really is at, and that's what I really enjoy the most.
Yeah, it's like people who hang out with their friends and they're working in a car. It's not my car. I'm not working on my car right now, but I want to hang out with you guys right now. I feel like I don't have to be working on my car right now to be hanging out with you guys. I think it's a good thing to have things in common, right? And having those people around, especially I like that you said like people are showing for each other. It's something that we have to really work on it, and we have to really acknowledge that we need a lot of more of that we have to be there for each other, because otherwise nobody is going to move forward, or nobody's going to be happy of trying to do something when nobody's showing up. So I like that you mentioned that, and go for it, Tucci.
Yeah, like I think you hit the nail on the head about creating physical spaces. Like, I think all of us on this podcast are of the generation where we saw physical spaces disappear in favor of digital spaces and, almost flash mob style events, and an increasing level of disconnectedness. And so nowadays people want to come to an event or a community where somebody remembers their name, somebody smiles when they see them and welcomes them. And honestly, Nikolai's got a leg up on me on this, because he has done mentorship and he runs a poetry community, and also, to be candid, I'm not good with names. I'm very good with faces. There are people I've been hanging out with for 8 years and I actually still don't know their first name. But you know, creating a community is about creating a sense of acceptance and joy and shared joy. And that should be something that we want to share and spread with others, regardless of whether it's poetry or photography or writing or what have you.
Thanks. And Luis is like, hey, that's me too. It's like I tell people upfront, and I'm gonna remember your name most likely, but I'm gonna remember your piece of work or the things that we talk about. So I have the same thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, don't get offended. It's not personal. It's just the way my brain works. Unless you have a cool name or have something like a name stands out really bad, right? But usually not the case.
Yeah,
And
I've seen firsthand Abraham really up someone's day stuff.
yeah. And then people have the audacity to say, you don't remember my birthday. Like, dude, I don't remember your name. That's what I have Facebook for,
I still
no.
don't know my sister's birthday, so like think I'm okay. Yeah,
Right?
we're okay.
Again, we remember them. We know what they stand for. We know what their favorite show is, right? What kind of chips they like. But I'm not gonna remember the day or And just going back for a second, most of you guys might not know have seen too much of their work. I want to talk about your books. Like, first, Nick, do you want to give us a little bit of an elevator pitch on like the first book that you have, and then the second one that's coming?
Yeah, the first one, Nuclear Shadows of Palm Trees, available on the DSTL Arts website. It's more of a poetry of place, very LA centric. It in some ways it was easy to work on, because I think by the time I discovered DSTL Arts, a lot of these poems had already been written. So it was a fun, easy process, I think, to do that. This second book, this is not the cover; it's just the title page. All the sad music. This is very much more connected to music. Um, a lot of ekphrastic pieces inspired by sculptures, by photography, but mostly music, mostly certain songs. Um, this one, even though I had the idea for it, and then I even already had some poems for it. It took a while to complete, mostly because these days I just work very slowly. The poems don't come out of me the way they used to. I mean, when I was younger, I used to write all kinds of poems, various, poems a day or whatever. Now it's like maybe one every couple of months or whatever. So it felt like it was a long process. It felt like a lot of work, but I'm happy with the result, and I'm happy for people to be able to purchase it at the end of this month at the LA Times Festival of Books.
So you're saying the first book was more like vodka and the second was more like wine?
I don't know if I would put it that way. Maybe the first book was more like a Jack and Coke, and the second one was just straight up Jameson.
Damn.
We have a connoisseur in the house.
And Tucci, do you want to talk about this coming book?
Sure. Threads of Imagination. I'm gonna be honest. I've done some things where like I kind of just, put together a few essays and threw them up on Amazon, usually under pseudonyms because they weren't that great. But like this is the first book that I've done where I've been proud enough of it to put my name on it. And that's mainly because of let me rephrase that, exclusively because of DSTL Arts, because you guys were so great in terms of feedback and editing and helping me put my best foot forward and giving suggestions that really improved like the book overall. And like it synthesized basically 20 years, maybe longer, of everything I've learned about visual storytelling into one book and distilled it, no pun intended, distilled it into something that is simple for people to pick up and say, oh, I can't pick up a huge book like Robert McKee's story, or I can't pick up a book like Save the Cat, but I can pick up this book and I can fill in the exercises on that. And for the visual folks, I will also point out, this was another idea that Luis suggested, which was to have like lined note pages in the book so that you could actually, I just realized it didn't show up because of Zoom, but lined pages in the book so that you could like have exercises and actually learn through doing, which is so important when doing something that you're passionate about and care about. So like, I am so proud of this and I can't wait for the sequel, which I am currently planning as well. That's a surprise for Luis and Abraham, but yeah, I'll mention that. So
Wow. So we have two like surprises. First, the miracle of disappearing. How you just did that. And then that's a new one coming, right?
yes.
Great stuff. And yeah, I think a lot, we having a couple of people thinking of how do books are meant to exist, and a lot of people are thinking of having a book to interact with more into because we interact with books like regardless, we just read them, we still interacting, but this is more of a play of like you, me, going back and forth. So I think that's interesting way of viewing books as well.
Yeah, and that's a conversation, like Abraham said, we've had with other people, and it's I think a fun conversation to have even with yourself as a writer or an artist in general. What would you define as a book? And clearly, most people will define it as what we all recognize, right? It's a set of bound sheets of paper put together in, the traditional book format. But a book could potentially be a whole lot more. And I think that that's maybe some of the things that both of you have experienced in your careers now as artists. And I am curious to hear your perspectives. How do you anticipate people interacting with not just your books, but with books in general in the future? because it is changing, right? The landscape has changed a bit. How do you imagine people will interact with the work that you produce in the future? Will it be online? Is it going to stay in a traditional format? I mean, that's also obviously a way to go. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I really don't know, and it's just, I mean, unfortunately, I don't really think it's for me to decide. If it was up to me, we just read print books. I don't like reading things, digitally on Kindles or whatever. I like physical media. I buy vinyl records. I don't download music or stuff like that. So I guess I'm very old school. But to me, books have always been very important as a way to open doors to other things, to amazing stories, to other cultures, to ideas, most importantly, and just introduce you also to people. You go to poetry readings and you meet all these awesome poets, and they'll tell you about what they're reading, and so you get to learn about other poets and their ideas. But like I said, I don't think it's not up to me. So I really don't know how to answer that question. If I could have it my way, we'd just be reading print books. If they do away with print books, then what's going to happen to bookstores? What's going to happen to libraries? If people are only getting their information from online, how are you going to know what's true or not? It's kind of crazy out there.
Yeah, having physical things to hold your book, just touching it, it's a different thing, right? That's like same thing with like people stealing your book because you made a mistake of let them borrow it. My book. And you tell them the first thing, turn it back because it's my book. But nope, it's gone.
Yeah.
And you, Tucci?
I gotta be honest, I'm probably on the opposite end of the spectrum on this. On the one hand, like, yes, it is important to have physical media, and I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Cloud Atlas. It's
We have a book club for that one. It's a weird book.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They also made a movie. It was directed by the same
The movie is the same thing. It's also
yeah,
hard to
yeah.
follow. But continue.
Yeah, but there is a part that takes place in this cyberpunk type future, and everything is digital. They have digital wallpaper, digital furniture, all of this stuff. And it's bright, it's colorful and stimulating, but then as soon as you turn it off, you realize, oh, everything's blank concrete. And to a certain extent, that's kind of the future we're headed with not having physical copies. And while I absolutely agree, there's also a certain amount of freedom for both the reader and the artist. I'm actually going through a process now where I listed all of my books on eBay, and I just plan on buying a digital copy when I sell them off. Because 2/3 of them I have not read, to be perfectly honest. But also as the artist, if I'm working at a digital format, I could literally do anything. I could put a video in the middle of the thing. I could put an audio file. I was actually thinking about doing that for a separate project, but that kind of freedom also opens to a certain amount of paralysis for the artist, because when you have the option to do anything, then how do you decide what to do? As a reader, as a reader, it's great because then you can just throw everything on a Kindle and go off to, sell your apartment and go off to live in Bali for a month. But as the artist, it's a little more complicated.
Yeah, when you were talking about like putting clips and putting sounds to books, I'm like, when does a book becomes a movie, right? or right? It's just a story that you're deciding to show different, like a different media, right? It's interesting that you put it out there because it definitely has the same thing. Like even a book that you can interact more, then it becomes a video game instead of a movie. So it's just how you express the story and how in what media, right? Like, and again, I love, this is the weird thing, I love the books, having them in the back, or like just having to flip in the correct page that I want. I kind of know where is it. But also I do photography and I hate like film. I just like the digital because it keeps my things compact into my computer, right? So I'm a hypocrite.
We all are to some degree. Yeah, what came to mind actually as you were talking about what I guess is called rich media is a project that I had seen before where people were putting QR codes, and those QR codes in these different locations around a city. It wasn't here in LA. When a person scanned it, it would actually launch an AR or augmented reality experience, and in some cases it included audio. So if you were wearing headphones, or you could probably stream the audio through the smartphone speaker, you could hear people actually performing poetry. And I thought that was really cool. It made the city itself, the landscape, a book. And I thought, wow, that's a very innovative way of approaching the concept of a book and storytelling.
It's called the Pokemon effect.
Yeah, Pokemon. Quite literally.
Oh my God.
The only thing is, guys, do not scan things that you don't know where they come from. Just saying, because those codes can have.
Yeah.
But scan this one that we're putting right now about the sales of these books, right?
Exactly. But yeah, I think this conversation about like the future of media and the future of books is an interesting conversation to have periodically, especially with two gentlemen that are quite I would call you prolific in your creative process, because it seems to me like both of you have created quite a body of work, even if it's, at least in the case of like Nikolai, it's a couple of chapbooks so far, plus other publishing credits, and Tucci, it's different little films and things that you have done up to this point. But I think maybe this might be a good segue into what is the future for both of you as individuals. Where may a person find out more about what you have going on? Tucci, you want to lead that one?
Sure. The future. Well, I'll answer the second question first. Where people can find me is at Greater Grander on all social media platforms. We got a Patreon. Our website is greaterandgrander.com or greatergrander.com. They'll both get you to the same place. As far as the future of, what's in store for me, I know that on Sunday, April 27th, I'll be at LA Times Festival of Books. But beyond that, like, I want to make cool shit. That's all it really boils down to. Whether it's prolific or whether I make 12 things in a year or half a thing in a year, I want to make cool shit. And if people are interested in working with me as a director or as a writer, as producer, you feel free to reach out. But it has to be awesome, whatever it is. And that's really all I care about.
We need a t-shirt that says that. I want to make cool shit.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm feeling that. Nick?
Well, if people want to see me, I'll be with Tucci at the book festival as well at the end of the month with the new chapbook. It's going to debut there. But besides that, people can usually find me in person at Page Against the Machine, which is a little bookstore in Long Beach, where I co-host the the Trenches Full of Poets reading series, and it's usually always on the second Thursday of each month. You can find me online at HelloKommie, Kommie with a K, and I'm hoping to do some more readings in different places. Because I feel like I read in pretty much everywhere in LA, so I try and focus in reading in places that I don't usually read in. Um, Last year, I read in a couple places in San Francisco. I've read in Fresno a couple of times. But I want to see if I can actually like get a reading somewhere out of state, and get a new audience and meet some new poets. And so that's what I'm hoping to do with this new chapbook until I decide that I want to sit down and write the next chapbook. I mean, I already have an idea of what the theme will be. I just need to be able to sit down and just start writing.
Nice.
Cool.
Nice.
Quick questions as you mentioned this, because I know you're moving around for some of these different shows or events that you have been to. How do you find the crowds of these different places, LA, San Francisco, San Diego? How do you see the differences? If there is any, of course, right?
I mean, the differences, I don't know. In some way, I because I talked to somebody who spent some time living in the Bay Area, and the thing that they notice is that some of those people don't like hanging out afterwards after events, which to me is like crazy. That's all we do down here. We go to readings and then go to the bar afterwards and just hang out and whatnot. But I mean, when I've been up there, we hang out. We do a reading and then we go to a place afterwards and just hang out and have a lot of fun. Sometimes if there's not a bar, an idea, we'll just go to a hotel room or whatever and just hang out and talk. But I feel like poets especially are gonna be the same everywhere, even if they don't drink. Even if they don't drink, they'll come along and just talk craft.
A poet with 0% alcohol. That's a first one.
They're out there. They're out there.
Yeah. So, for sure, everyone, we are very much inviting you to come join us at the LA Times Festival of Books. That's going to be April 26th and April 27th. That's obviously the very end of the month, the last weekend. It's going to happen at USC. Pick up a copy of Threads of Imagination, Nuclear Shadows of Palm Trees, and all the sad music there, or online at distlarts.org/shop. My accent came out on that one. Yeah, man, I'm glad that both of you could join us for our episode of the podcast this month. I think that it's a great opportunity to hear some of these little surprises that I didn't even know were in the works from both of you. Already your second and third chapbooks in the works. That's great to hear. Do either of you have any like last bits of advice that you might want to share with those up and coming artists that occasionally peruse the DSTL Arts catalog?
I don't have advice except buy my book. I have more of a question actually. Like, I'm really glad that this podcast included Tucci, who was we were in the same cohort, and I was hoping we would get into it, and maybe we can get into it a little bit before we end. Because poetry workshops, I mean, that's the best part I think about this is these workshops that we do where we workshop our work and we get feedback, and that stuff is not new to me. And Tucci came in with a whole different kind of project. He was doing essays, which at first it was intimidating to me because I don't know how to critique that stuff. But it was very fun. Um, Tucci spoiled a lot of movies for me that I haven't seen, like Casablanca. Um, but I was just wondering what Tucci thought of that process. If he's been part of other workshops with screenwriting, or just what he thought about receiving feedback and stuff.
Uh, I've thank you, Nikolai, for your kind words. So yes, you're correct. I've been in a lot of screenwriting workshops where not only do you get feedback from your colleagues, but you actually often read the work from your colleagues aloud, so they will hear it in a voice outside of their own head, which Luis was very adroitly, let's go with that word. That's a nice $5 word. Adroitly asked us to do in terms of the poems, reading them to one another. Um, and getting feedback on that on my essays, that was actually something I'd not done previously because I used to just kind of write those essays just for personal reasons. But having people give feedback on something um, that was so personal to me, and in some cases, not with you, Nikolai, but with other cases of people making assumptions about me based on like a word here that was misplaced or a sentence here that taken out of context meant something outside of the entire rest of the chapter. That was really an eye-opening experience for me in terms of that. And I'm very grateful that I went through it, honestly. So yeah.
I should like cut that little section out and put that up on the on the website to promote the program. um, yeah, I'm glad that you had questions too, Nick. I mean, obviously, us as hosts, we're not the only ones that have curiosities about the way that people do their work and approach their work. Abraham?
Oh, well, so I always like to ask, what is an artist that you want to talk about? Like that you feel like inspires you, or that you feel like you are into it now, or you were into it later? Because I kind of like to get my own catalog of things from people. What are they listening to, looking at, especially movies, books, poetry, whatever type of art you want to talk about, like which specific artist comes to mind. And don't mind if you don't remember the name, but you can talk about their work if you want to.
Oh God. Speaking of Cloud Atlas, the Wachowski siblings are always doing incredible like boundary pushing stuff. As far as other stuff that I'm kind of looking at, the original Dracula, Bram Stoker's Dracula, that is a bop. Like that is like, and also like don't listen to it at night because you'll get really scared actually. So I'll just throw that out there. But yeah,
good stuff.
I'm gonna shout out some friends of mine. Soledad con Carne released their first chapbook recently, and it's a very, very poetry of place book, all about the 818, the Valley. So people should check that out. Look them up on online. They have a very unique name, Soledad con Carne. And the title of the book is SFV or Die Fool. And then as well, somebody else from the Valley, Ivan Salinas, who works at Beyond Baroque. He's for a long time been producing a lot of zines. I'm waiting for him to come out with his own proper book or chapbook, but he makes a lot of cool zines. He's co-editor of Drifter Zine, and then he just has his own work that he puts out, and you can get it from him when he's vending, or I know you can find a lot of his stuff at Stories or even at Beyond Baroque itself. But he recently wrote this poem called Sonidero Blues. Um, and me and him and this other poet, Grace, we had gone to the consulate sometime last year to see some documentaries about sonidero music. And ever since I left that event, I've been thinking like how, because so much of my work these days is connected to music. I've been thinking like, how can I make a sonidero poem, and that's just been something that's been in my mind. How do I combine those two things? Because that would be freaking dope. And so I haven't been able to do it. And then this guy emailed me this poem because he wanted some feedback on a translation of his own poem. And I was kind of upset, like, damn, this fool fucking beat me to it. It's such a great poem. I know it's in one of his zines, and I saw him read it recently, and that's my favorite poem at the moment, Sonidero Blues. And I mean, I'm still hoping to do something somehow connected to cumbia and poetry, maybe a poetry reading with cumbia and poetry. I don't know, but look those two Valley poets up, Soledad Concarne and Ivan Salinas.
Cool stuff. And again, that's a cool thing about art, you sometimes are jealous of it, but also inspires you to like, I can do it. I just need to get myself into the mode, go to that bar and listen to that music.
And sorry, Abraham, but I gotta jump in because I didn't realize we could shout out people we know and friends of ours. So I gotta shout out.
Oh, now it's a competition. Okay, bring it.
No. Just giving shout outs for people I know. Sorry. So in all seriousness, these are like the really good, really talented friends of mine. The people who I feel like should be getting more stuff. Ryan Stevens Harris, buddy of mine from USC. He directed a movie called Moon Garden. And I am not exaggerating when I say this. Moon Garden, I think, is a cinematic masterpiece. It is amazing. Produced by John Elfers. Rest in peace, John. Also, directed by a buddy of mine from Chapman University, Justin Simeon. He directed a movie called Dear White People. Also, brilliant, magnificent movie. If you like podcasts, my buddy Peter Podgorski, he did this whole series called NPR Armageddon. It's like NPR, but in the apocalypse. It's really weird. I'm just going to let you know up front. And then also like three of the best stand-up comics I know working today, Anna Valenzuela, Virginia Jones, and Heather Meza. Three amazingly talented progressive women doing stand-up comedy, art in its finest. And now I'll shut up.
Excellent. And I think, guys, you guys just make sense of this whole thing that I have been trying to create from the beginning, like asking people about artists. It's a good, for like anybody who's starting the first episode till now, every episode have a piece of paper and like try to write down either the musician, the photographer, and you will end up surprised. It's some cool things that you can find out, like, other artists recommending other artists. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that's a fact right there. I'm really happy to see also that Sol did finally finish their chapbook. They had some difficulties while in our program, but I'm really, really happy to know that they finished it and got it published. That's awesome.
The first baby is always the hardest. That's what they say.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I'm really happy that y'all got a chance to share with us, some of your inspirations and current motivations. Again, to all of our crew out there listening or watching the podcast, be sure to join us. Again, that's April 26th and April 27th, Saturday and Sunday at USC for the LA Times Festival of Books. Our booth number is 3054-3054. We have a ginormous booth, and throughout that entire weekend, we will have readings and a couple of workshops happening, including one with Senor Tucci and a reading with Nikolai, debuting all the sad music. So come through, check us out. Abraham, do you have any parting shots? Any last words you'd like to
Yeah,
share?
have a final word. If you want to find us, I guess just listen to Sonidero and you'll find our booth.
Yeah, just hear that. That'll be us. Guaranteed. All right, y'all. Enjoy the rest of your day. I hope y'all have a really good, solid week. And we'll see you in the next episode. Take care, y'all.